So tonight's discussion is about jQuery and SharePoint, and our speaker is Kevin Vieira from KWizCom.
He said it with an accent, so you know he's means business.
Yeah, and take it away. Maybe you want to say where you've been.
Obviously, I am not Bill Brockbank as well. I'm Kevin Vieira. I work for KWizCom. I'm the product development manager. Used to be a senior consultant there. And what I do there is I'm responsible for overseeing how we manage, maintain, and develop our products. Has anybody ever heard of KWizCom? I'm sure you have. If you know who Shai is, have you ever heard Shai speak here?
Yeah.
He's actually my boss. I work under him. How many people are familiar with KWizCom's products? Anybody? There we got a couple guys in the back. Yeah. So I'm responsible for overseeing the development and maintenance of those products. Obviously, today I'm here to talk about jQuery and SharePoint. As it was said earlier, it's one of the most controversial topics. Some people think it's the greatest thing in the world, and some people stay away from it as much as they can. How many people actually have used jQuery before? Oh shit. It's hoping for a negative audience. And how many people haven't used jQuery? Just a few. Who thinks jQuery is the greatest thing ever created and it solves all your problems? So we're going to get along. And who thinks you should just stay away from jQuery and not use it at all in SharePoint? You. Why exactly? Do you care to share?
Perhaps I'm just being too enthusiastic, but it just struck me as kind of like a clunky way to do things.
Clunky?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just a little awkward.
Do you want to elaborate a little bit why you meant by clunky? I'd rather just talk to you than just go through the slides. Is that all right? I'd just like to ask questions. You ask me questions, and that's kind of how I do things. Why do you think it was clunky? What do you mean by clunky, first of all?
I don't know. It just...
Is it the notation? Is it having to have plugins, jQuery templates? What was it exactly that was clunky for you?
I would probably say of what you listed, it would be the notation.
The notation. Okay, so the JavaScript notation, things like that. Fair enough. I just want to get a feel for the audience and who's used jQuery and who loves it and who doesn't. Obviously, one person really likes it, and everybody else is neutral. So I'm just going to go over the topics for this presentation. Obviously, we're going to do a little jQuery overview. Most of you already know what it is, so that might be a little pointless. Why use jQuery? This guy is not going to be on my side about that. Deployment, maintenance, upgrades. I'm going to give you some insight into one of the best third-party libraries that uses jQuery. I'll tell you what development likes and give you a couple tips, and then I'll give you a little demo. Very light demo. I'm trying to keep this. Broad. I'm not trying to get too in depth here. I've only got another hour and a half to go. Anyway, let's get started. So, jQuery quite simply is a JavaScript library. It's cross-browser compliant and it's lightweight, which goes against what the gentleman in the corner was saying about it being clunky. I feel like it is very lightweight. You get the minified version, it's about 160K. You get the uncompressed development version, it's about 360K. Considering all the libraries that are loaded in SharePoint and how big they are, it is quite lightweight. It is pretty condensed. And the big point here it is cross-browser compliant. You may have a couple quirks here and there, but for the most part it works on every browser. Has anybody had any issues with jQuery in any particular browser? Okay, so it is cross-browser compliant so far. I feel that it's a library that makes it quicker and easier to build JavaScript web pages, web apps, or even web parts. And it's written in JavaScript, obviously, and it comes in the form of a single JS file. We all know this. So what does that mean? You don't really need assemblies to use jQuery and SharePoint, especially if you start using web services with jQuery. It takes away from having to reference those assemblies and the overhead of having assemblies. And the most important part, it is free. Free is good, right? Usually, sometimes, maybe. I think free is good, especially when it's such an elaborate utility such as jQuery. Basically, to sum it up, jQuery is a library that's designed to change the way you write JavaScript. How many people are very familiar with JavaScript and write a lot of JavaScript every day? Okay, but just a second ago I asked if who's used jQuery, and like 90% of the room put their hands up, but Now I ask you if you use JavaScript and only 5 people put their hands up. That's, I don't know, it's kind of confusing. You guys are throwing me off. What can you do with jQuery? Well, you can pretty much do with jQuery what you can do with JavaScript. If you were to write out all your own methods and functions and utilities and abstracts, you can, HTML document transversing, event handling, animations, AJAX interactions. It's pretty much, it's a concise and fast library that simplifies HTML document transversing. Like, say if you want to do DOM manipulation, jQuery makes that really easily. Who knows what a jQuery selector is, or how to use a jQuery selector? Does anybody want to? Can I use you? Like, you know what a jQuery selector is? What do I mean when I say a jQuery selector?
A method to pick out something that you want to find from the DOM.
And jQuery makes that very easy. Everybody knows what the DOM is in a web page, correct? It's the document object model. Every page is an object. It has, you can access properties of that page, elements on that page, and jQuery makes it very easy to select specific elements from the page and manipulate them. That's what document transversing is. It also makes it very easy to take into consideration event handling. Attaching a method to an element for event handling is very easy in jQuery. You select that element with a jQuery selector. You say, you add it, you attach it to the click event, and you're off to the races. It's quite that simple, and I'll actually show you an example of that in the demo. It also allows you to do, great animations. Fade in, fade out, slideshow. Because sometimes when it's flashy, it distracts from the fact that it might be working in the background, just maybe for a split second, until they catch on. And the most important thing, well, from my perspective, is the AJAX interaction. How many people have started working in SharePoint in 2010? And who of those people that worked in SharePoint 2010 also worked on 2007? So you've noticed quite a shift in the way 2010 works versus 2007. In 2007, you had a lot of page refreshes, a lot of cycle backs to the servers. It felt like it was very clunky and it was very heavy. Every time you did something, there was a new page. But in 2010, they try to get away from that. It's they have specific parts of the page that are refreshes. The ribbon's always on the page. It's very Ajaxified, I guess you could say. Is Ajaxified a word yet?
It is now.
It should be.
English is a living language.
It should be. It's very Ajaxified. They try to make it as AJAX friendly as possible. Only specific parts of the page that need to be refreshed get refreshed. And using jQuery to do XML document handling and things like that is very useful, especially when you want to do HTML, HTTP requests to the server or to a web service to get information from the server without having to actually refresh the page. jQuery makes that all possible for you. So jQuery does a lot of things, but what do you need in order to be able to work with jQuery? Obviously JavaScript, which is confusing because people who said they use jQuery said they don't do JavaScript. That didn't make any sense. CSS, to a certain extent, you have to know about classes and selectors and things like that. HTML, obviously, you have to know how the DOM works, how a page is built, what the hierarchy works, what specific elements is. Camel, I do not like Camel. Who likes Camel, or who actually knows what Camel is? Okay. Damn, not many people know what Camel is. A collaborative application markup language. Basically, it's the way you query things in SharePoint using their web services. The way you usually query lists for views and things like that. You still need to know Camel in order to use the web services using jQuery. You obviously need a development background and object-oriented background because it is JavaScript. And most people think about JavaScript as, oh, it's not code, you're just sort of hacking about, you're sort of working on the page, you're sort of working for the client. But I want you to remember, even though jQuery is JavaScript, it is still code. It uses development constructs, and unless you can write code, it's not going to perform magic for you. You're going to have to get familiar with the object-oriented approach and a development background. How many people know what object-oriented programming is? 1, 2, 3. So you're good. I'm not making up words on the fly. Well, here are the typical things you hear when people say use jQuery to solve all your SharePoint problems. It makes it look like SharePoint, therefore it's SharePoint. SharePoint can't do that. We've heard that. I think we've heard that a million times. SharePoint can't do that out of the box. I think that should be a slogan. SharePoint can't do that out of the box. becomes sure no problem. You know, it takes 3 weeks to do something very simple. With jQuery, it takes 2 days. This is, I don't believe any of this. Everything takes time. jQuery will make it a little bit faster. jQuery will make it maybe a little bit easier if you're comfortable working on the client side. It will make it maybe a little bit more lightweight, but it's not going to solve every single one of your problems. It's not the SharePoint silver bullet. It's not going to suddenly make you the best developer in the world, but it may help. It may make you look a little bit more flashy because you can do all those cool animations.
And once you bypass your app dev process, so that makes it like.
Yes, very lightweight. You don't. Yeah, I like that. Actually, the best thing about jQuery is you could prototype a web part with jQuery and JavaScript without actually ever having to open up Visual Studio or anything like that. Without actually having to deploy assembly. So you can prototype all these web parts just using JavaScript and using the content editor web part and putting your JavaScript right in there and testing it out on the spot. You don't have to open Visual Studio, you don't have to deploy any assemblies, you don't have to do any of that. Before it even gets going, you can prototype things very quickly with jQuery and just JavaScript. Now, let's bust some of the common myths. jQuery is not safe. It's not secure. I think you said that people will accuse you, I've said that jQuery may actually bring down your entire farm. Who believes that? Who believes that it's not secure?
Well,
Wow.
what do you mean by secure? Not
Well, secure. Well, you just said
Not safe or not secure?
Using it is not safe.
Yeah, it can be not safe.
It can be not safe, but can any JavaScript, you know?
I think the complaint is that before you deploy something that's been developed and deployed as a solution, it's been tested and vetted, and it's got professional programmers looking at it. Anybody can toss some JavaScript into a content editor web part and break things.
I think it's about control, not only safety, but
Right.
controlling what users can and cannot do.
Yeah, it's the context of who can do it, and
But at the same time, if they have access to the content and the web part, and you do allow them to inject JavaScript from the very beginning, is it specifically jQuery that's the problem, or is
no, it's not jQuery. It's the fact of injecting code.
Okay,
into
so
the content.
so that complaint about jQuery is not specific to jQuery. It's about the client. It's about the client giving clients access to the client object model and allowing them to use it. Which yeah, I'm sure if you get some really hacky people who can surprise you with their Google searches, they can do something. They can do some tricky things that bring down your farm, but that would actually take a lot of work. You could, I don't know. jQuery, like every other JavaScript file in SharePoint, runs in the context of the user. It runs with the same privileges as that user. So any other JavaScript, so you might as well stop using JavaScript altogether if you're going to complain about jQuery being responsible for bringing down your farm. It is pretty secure. It runs in the same context as all your other JavaScript files. It doesn't perform well. Yeah, that can be true. That can be true. But it can be true of any JavaScript method you write. If you use jQuery for the wrong reasons, or for everything, or for manipulating a ton of data, you got to understand that data is going to be manipulated on the client side, and it may be very slow. It is plausible that it doesn't perform well. You just got to use it in the right situations. Another complaint is maybe you can't interact properly with lists or libraries. Again, that's not true. Has anybody ever heard of SP services? So, if you were to sum up what SP services is, how would you define it?
So I'm not a developer, but it abstracts the APIs or the web service calls so that you can just call these functions that are pre-written that take care of all the communication.
Are you sure you're not a developer? That was
not a developer.
Perfect. That was a perfect description. Do you want?
Well, technically, I have a complex project that I actually presented here. That using jQuery to drag and drop and interact with lists and libraries is the whole thing. That would be only that would be easy to process.
That disproves your.
Actually, I have a similar project, not a complex or anything, but I use Silverlight and jQuery to be able